Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Forest podcast here at the Global Sports Podcast Network. Now, in the last few days, Forest have been out in Dubai. James, has your last few days been quite as exciting as that?
No, it's not. I've made some shortbread, still got my pinning, and I'm missing the football, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's quite unusual that our weekend game has been moved to a Tuesday. The less said about the weird FA broadcasting contracts, the better. But from a Forest point of view, going away to Dubai, not having any last minute sales or 10 players turning up at the training ground on transfer deadline day, probably for the best when you look at the grand or the greater context of the season.
Yeah, it's so strange, and everything's strange about this season anyway that we're having to get used to. But just some of the weirdities, the oddities of this season, and like you say, there being no deadline day drama. There were lights on at the City Ground, which is usually, the way or the indication that someone's being signed, and that was the young lad from Reading who went straight back. But yeah, it's all quiet on the Western Front.
And you think that's a good thing? I mean, we don't want to dwell too long on deadline day now, but would you have wanted that extra attacking player maybe? Or on balance, in Nuno we trust, if there was no player available who would have improved that 11, you're happy to stick with what we have for those remaining 14 league games left in the season?
Yeah, I think the mix that we've got at the minute is good, and that the stage we're at in the season is so vital to keep the status quo and keep the balance that we've found, that I think it would have been twice as or if not even 10 times as delicate a situation to start introducing big players right in the middle of the season, whereas in the summer maybe there'll be that opportunity to bring in some bigger names that can add to it. But I think the danger of bringing in like another Emmanuel Dennis or something like that, and Kyle Bosch in the squad was too much.
Yeah, I think I agree, especially up front, because if we had bought a striker, then you're either going to bring in a striker who's happy sitting on the bench, in which case you got to question the mentality, or if you bring in a striker who's expected to start, then what does that take to Chris Wood, who's been so fantastic for the whole season? So you're right. I don't think bringing in a signing would necessarily have been the best option. And yeah, we've seen flickers from the likes of Ramon Sousa, Jota Silva, Danilo and Sangare coming back from their injuries. Yeah, on balance, I think keeping the squad the same. And I know that Ward-Prowse left, but you can't argue that would weaken the squad based on how little he played and your well-known thoughts about Ward-Prowse. I think all in all, it was a very successful January window for Forest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about the news this week about the sheep down the road losing their shepherd and Warne being sacked, but then the odds for Cooper taking the job?
Yeah,
Which
I mean,
any club in that position, I could see Cooper being attractive for what he did for us from that position, but surely it can't go to Derby as well.
No, I think if Cooper is genuinely interested in the Derby job, I think all that means is he loves living in Nottinghamshire so much that he doesn't want to move out again. So that's probably one of the reasons maybe why he took Leicester, and that could surely be the only reason why he'd go to Derby, that he just loves the region so much. So yeah, it would be interesting to see where Steve Cooper ends up next. I think at some point he'll go to Wrexham because he's from that area, and he'll be the big superstar signing for their documentary. Former Premier League head coach Steve Cooper. But yeah, no, I think it looks like Derby are going to bring in John Eustace from Blackburn, which is again quite odd because Blackburn are in the playoffs and Derby are in the relegation zone. So yeah, that's if Derby are, maybe I think see there's problems with Blackburn rather than benefits of Derby. Let's say it that way.
Wow. Well, yeah, I'm all about that. I mean, it upset me a bit when he went to Leicester, but Leicester, let's be honest, it's not a traditional derby, at least for my generation that we've been going to. So as much as Leicester would love to think that Leicester Forest was a big derby, it's not. So, but going to Derby would have really kind of tarnished him in that respect. But I'll be glad that he doesn't, because I do like the guy.
Yeah, I think his Leicester time is now forgiven almost because he's maybe played his part in Leicester going straight back down. But you're right. I think if he go into Derby straight after Leicester, then we'd unfortunately have to cast him just as a mercenary going wherever the cash is, as long as it's within a 45-minute drive of his home.
Yeah, yeah.
No, and again, in terms of the managerial situation, and just while talking of managers, there were some whispers about a week ago about giving Nuno a new contract. So his current deal expires end of next season, so summer 2026. Do you think we should be a priority, or do you think more on the playing side is the priority, and Nuno, we don't need to rush to do it quite so quickly?
I think first of all, contracts around managers, I think, seem to be less important because I don't think managers kind of walk away, and that we don't pay a transfer fee for them as such. I know that we did pay some money for Cooper and different things, but usually you don't pay a transfer fee for a manager unless it's a release clause. So, in that respect, I'm not worrying about him walking away, and the club would save a lot of money in not giving him an extended contract when they eventually do part ways, because let's be honest, it's football. But then at the same time, the uncertainty around the managerial situation can leak into the squad. And next season's going to be difficult with hopefully European football as well. So I'd say give him a new contract, and give it to him now, because if you give it to him in the summer and we've qualified for the Champions League, he's got a much bigger stick to beat Marinakis with when it comes to demanding money. Whereas right now, nothing's been achieved. So give it to him now.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, maybe like with everything, if he gets us into the Champions League this season, or minimum Europa League or something, and then maybe says that's as far as he can take us, and then maybe he chooses to, I don't know, after the World Cup take the Portugal job or something like that. So you're right. Although Nuno, certainly we're all in Nuno we trust at the moment. Yeah, football is a very short term business, and will Nuno definitely be the manager of Forest in 2 years from now? We can't say that because history suggests he probably won't be.
Yeah.
But no,
Alfie's nodding. Alfie seems to think that he will be. So how long do you think Nuno's going to be with Forest, Alf?
How long has he got left on his contract?
A year.
A year. I think he'll sign a new contract for 3 years, and then we'll see how it goes.
A new contract for 3 years. Could you imagine if Forest had a manager that lasted, it'd be half a season from last season, this year, and then 3 more, 4.5 years, the same manager?
Yeah, it would be longest in my lifetime for sure. Longest since Frank Clark even, or maybe he was less than 4 years. So it could even be longest since Clough.
Yeah, that'd be crazy, wouldn't it? It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
It'd be a record for Marinakis, surely.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I don't know how many managers Olympiacos will have in that time. No,
Yeah.
but
Very good.
about as we go into sort of the next phase of the season, then so we've got the FA Cup coming up on Tuesday. I know that we've said before that it's maybe not a priority, but having seen already this weekend Liverpool drop out, Chelsea drop out, Man City playing so unconvincingly, have you changed your mind? Do you see a path open up for a potential Forest run all the way, or are you still the same as you were 10 days ago or so when we last spoke on this topic? Don't care. You want to focus on that top 3 league finish.
I will admit that it's more attractive because being the top rated team in the competition, it's a feeling that I've never had before in my life, and didn't realise until just a few minutes ago when I saw it online, and then thought, wow, that's a weird feeling, being like the favourites for once for such a big competition as well, the FA Cup. Unreal. So I kind of want to stick with that now. I've changed my tune, but like you say, a lot of big teams have gone out. So yeah, I say go for it.
Yeah, no, it certainly will be very interesting to see whether this has subtly changed the plans of Nuno. I would hope not. I would hope he's focusing on Forest and only Forest. And if he was planning to, I don't know, for example, rest Gibbs White and Elanga, he isn't going to suddenly change his mind just because Liverpool have lost to Plymouth. They should be unconnected. No, it is definitely very interesting to see where the priorities lie, and we will find out now before kickoff on Tuesday where the priorities do lie. But speaking of, maybe there'll be options off the bench to make an impact. Speaking of options off the bench, we are now joined by Marley, who will share his thoughts on the January transfer window with us after the break.
Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at the Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description below to learn more about Zencastr.
Marley, are you with us? Can you hear us?
Marley, we can't see you, bro. Oh well, he'll come on in a minute, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll give him a bit more time. So James, what's your starting lineup for Exeter? 11 changes from the team who beat Brighton 7-0, or would you go half and half, 5 of the regulars, 6 of the more second string, or would you go completely fully strength? Who would you see Nuno picking on Tuesday?
Well, we know it's going to be Carlos Miguel in net. He's the cup goalkeeper, so he'll be in net. Then we've got at the back, I think it's going to be Bolle and Morata. I think the back four will change. We'll have either Moreno or Toffolo at left back. Or did Moreno go on loan in the end?
No, Moreno stuck around. Yes, we only the rumours to go back to Spain, but we only lost Ward-Prowse, so he's still there.
So I think Moreno will come on at left back, and I think right back will be
Moreira.
Moreira, the other guy, or Marley's shout for the Ballon d'Or. And then midfield it'll be Yates, Dominguez, then
not Sangare.
No, I still don't think he's fit enough. I do think he'll play, or maybe he will start. Maybe he'll start. Maybe it'll be Yates and Sangare, and then with Jota, Souza, and Awoni. So I think 11 changes. Who would you have on the right? Who's on the right?
Yeah, it would be Jota, Souza, Awoni as that front three. So I can't see. But if he's going to make 11 changes, the only alternative from what you've said is to do, because Morata did play, of course, against Brighton. So we're going for literally 11 changes. You put Toffolo or Abbott partnering Bolle at centre-back. Of course, Toffolo played centre-back in that Luton game. That would be a possibility to, if you want to really make 11 changes and shoehorn Toffolo in, and then you could do. But ultimately, Morata, he's not played every single game all season, so if he plays 2 games this week, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm sure he's wanting to build a bit of a run, build a bit of momentum into the team.
Yeah, I think it'd be wholesale changes. Got to be. Let's be honest. Exeter shouldn't be a difficult game. I'm not saying it won't be. Today Plymouth beating Liverpool. I think only 4 times they said has the bottom club in the Championship or the second tier beating the top club in the top tier of the Premier League as it is at the moment. So, these things happen. We're at Exeter right now in the league system. In League One.
They're in League One, so they're in the third tier. It's a good point. Let's do our research and find out where exactly in League One they are. Because with Plymouth, they had such a bad season with Wayne Rooney that they needed just something, a shot in the dark to invigorate their season. What's interesting is Exeter are 18th in League One, and currently a few points above the relegation zone. So I think almost that they want to. That means that they won't have their full focus on us because they don't want to be dragged into that relegation zone. Whereas Plymouth, they're almost completely gone down. So they had this moment in the sun to get themselves a bit of pride and a bit of one memory in this lousy Wayne Rooney started season. But because Exeter have got more in play, I think that means they possibly won't be as up for it as Plymouth were. Which, even with that team we've mentioned before, we should comfortably get past them. Let's come to one or two of the players in that team. So what do you think Tyrone Owoni's headspace will be in? There's rumours all January he might even leave to Everton or to West Ham even, but he stayed and no one else came in to replace him. Will that increase his confidence maybe? But he knows that there's still at least a bit of faith in him. He's going to start on Tuesday maybe, and he might get a bit of form, or does he worry you even in the team against Exeter? And are you in the camp of that he's finished, he's past it?
No, to be honest, I think Taiwo's got to come out and be bagging a hat trick. I think he's got to just come out and have that energy about him. He's always shows, bright sparks and different things. Yes, he doesn't seem to be the Taiwo from the first season, but he's just not had the run of games, has he? And it's difficult to get it in front of Wood at the minute. I don't think any striker, bar some of the really world-class strikers out there at the minute, would get in ahead of Wood in this purple patch that he's got going on. And I think Owoni, take your chance, mate. This is your time. You'll get 60, 70 minutes. And I genuinely don't think he'll play all 90 minutes regardless of how he performs. You get 60 and 70 minutes, and then Wood will come on for just, keep his legs warm. They did it against Luton, and they brought on some of the bigger players against Luton when, we didn't need to. We'd scored the second goal, but I think they bring them on just to keep some minutes in the legs and keep them ticking over because, keep them match sharp. But Owoni, take by the horns.
It is interesting that I think I spoke with Marley on a podcast a couple of weeks ago when we were looking early ahead to Exeter, and Marley said he would like some of the academy players, some of the B team players to get some game time against Exeter, but they were all loaned out. Joe Gardner to Lincoln, Ben Perry to Northampton, Sava Osong to another League One side, and Cambridge, I believe. So all of those older B team players, the 20-21-year-olds, as opposed to the teenagers, were loaned out. Do you think that's a good thing? Are they going to be playing half a season of League One football rather than the occasional sub appearance for Forest in the first team? Or do you think it leaves us a bit light? Because if Tyro's not going to play the whole game, it's going to have to be Chris Wood making the long journey to Exeter just for 15-20 minutes. Or do you not see that as a concern?
No, I think because we've got such a tight unit at the moment, Nuno's obviously seen that and thought there's probably not going to be the opportunity for some of these kids to get, unless, heaven forbid, we get injuries, in which case I'm sure in some cases we might be able to recall some of these players depending on what the contracts were. But it's, again, don't want to upset the apple cart trying to shoehorn youth players in and different things like that when every game's going to be a cup final basically from now to the end of the season.
Speaking of shoehorning in our younger talents, Marley, can you hear us this time?
No. My days.
Let's give him another ad break and see how he's getting on.
This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League teams, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day.
Is Marley here?
No, it didn't make it. The pathway for first team minutes on the podcast are still blocked up. Marley is still AWOL, unfortunately. But no, that just means that for those listening, we'll have to do another episode tomorrow. Maybe do a Tactics Tuesday before the game with Marley, so he can share his thoughts on what happened in the January transfer window and what he thinks is going to happen. As you said a few minutes ago, James, in our 14 cup finals we have remaining in the league. So without wanting to go through all 14 matches, let's go through the next 4, because the interesting thing is they're against 4 of the 5 teams we've lost to so far. So that's Fulham, Arsenal, Newcastle, and City all in a row. So what would be a good points return from those 4 games for you?
9.
9 from 12. Yeah. So I think that's just revenge. Will we have learned what went wrong in those defeats, or do you think we're better now than we were in October and November when those initial games happened?
We've got to beat City. We'll beat Fulham. And then it'll be a loss and a win from Arsenal and Newcastle. Don't know which way around. I want to say Newcastle are form at the minute. And, you know, that'll be that'll be a tougher game than Arsenal. Probably. You know, Arsenal seem to be grinding out results. Kai Havertz seems to be randomly managing to score. So it'll be tough, but I'm saying City's going to be revenge because they're just what is it? They're absolute dross at the minute.
Yeah, it's crazy how their only game they've played well in the last 3 months was somehow when they beat us in December. And we're, apart from that, I mean, last weekend in the Premier League, they started the weekend with a goal difference 11 better than ours, and we equalled it. So we won 7-0, they lost by 4 goals. We've now got the same goal difference as them, from an 11-goal swing just in the match days last weekend. So, yeah, it will be really interesting. So City are, I think, certainly the only Big Six team we haven't beaten yet back in the Premier League. Maybe we haven't beaten Bournemouth. Yeah, I think it could just be just City and Bournemouth we haven't beaten since our return to the Premier League.
Let's just clarify something, right? You said Big Six team. Who are your Big Six these days? Because I don't think the traditional Big Six are the traditional Big Six anymore.
No, I mean,
I'd say City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea. Who else?
I mean, but by Big Six in that comment, we haven't beaten the Big Six. The Big Six as of when we got promoted. So you have to add in United and Spurs. We were looking forward to playing them as the Big Six when we first got into it. But you're right, there isn't a Big Six now. You can maybe put Villa in there. Villa ahead of Spurs. Villa are in the Champions League now. But you're right, it just doesn't seem right, does it? Sound right?
I'd say if you want to put Villa in there, then next season you put us in there. You know what I mean? But then we wouldn't be, would we? Let's be honest. Right now, we're not Big Six. Even if we get Champions League this season, we're not going to be Big Six next season. I think you need to be consistently hitting that top 4, top 5, top 6 slots. So I think Man United and Spurs, you're gone.
Yeah, I think
it's a big 4. That's it.
I mean, the muscle memory, I think you'd always look at Man United being a successful win just because you remember them being good. But then every year they aren't. That gets further and further away. Marley, 5th time lucky, who are Manchester United still a big club? Go. Yes.
I can't wait for them to come to the City ground.
Yeah, I mean, we will be clear favourites. I mean, not just, I think Forest can sneak a win. The Forest will go into that game as clear favourites, looking for what will be a 3rd straight Premier League win against Manchester United. So yeah, I don't even know when it is off the top of my head because it's not a fixture circled in my calendar because this season they aren't very good. They aren't challenging.
Yeah, it's big 4. United, you're sunk. Like yeah, there can be a big historic club, but I'd say historically we've done big things. But current big 4, big 6, Man United aren't there anyway.
Definitely. So Marley, earlier in the episode, James and myself weren't too upset about the lack of signings. We thought it would be risking the team spirit if the big signing came in, and we were happy that the guys were off in Dubai, growing that team spirit even further. What's your take? Would you still rather have had 1 and 2 extra bodies in, or are you also content with how the window ended up? Yeah, I think with the centre back, I mean, yeah, that fifth centre back was Andrew Omobamidele, and I think the gamble was made that 14 games left. If Omobamidele didn't play a single Premier League minute, it'd be unfair to keep him not playing minutes. He needs that experience in Strasbourg, and we need to sign somebody to potentially also not play often. Yeah, I think on balance, maybe they're happy with Bolly being that current backup option and Zach Abbott as an emergency. Maybe they were happy enough with that. Because you're right, if we've got Bolly, Marato, Murillo, Milenkovic, to keep at least 2 of those fit, I think we should do, especially with not so many games left.
Well, yeah. And I think you could pretty much say he won't be on the bench on Tuesday. In Exeter.
If we needed someone immediately with Tyler Bindon, he could have joined now. But the fact that he was loaned straight back to Reading for the end of the season suggests, that Murillo won't be in the squad on Tuesday, but he will then be again on against Fulham the coming Saturday.
So, what we thinking the scores are going to be on Tuesday at Exeter?
I mean, I'll go quick. So I've said some thoughts about Exeter, maybe not being as focused as Plymouth were. So I think it'll be same as Luton, a nice, straightforward 2-0 win for Forest. So Marley, from your side, you've quickly previewed the game in your side. Who would you like to see play, and what do you think the score would be? So you put
Nice. Yeah, I like that. Well, I'm scared of hackers. I'm scared of players getting told by their manager, nothing to lose, free hit tonight. We're not expected to beat Nottingham Forest. Go out there, play your little socks off. And in the first 10 minutes, some less than skilled, overly ambitious centre back 2 foots one of our good players, they're all good players, but one of our main players like Anderson, and puts him out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Marley, you mentioned the draw. The draw will be made Monday, so ahead of our match on Tuesday, which James and myself hadn't thought of when we did the first part of the episode. Because you're right, if the next round, if it is Millwall at home or Stoke at home, someone boring for both of us, then it's not going to affect either team's mindsets at all. But if it is Manchester United at home, that might increase the excitement for Exeter. If it is that derby against Plymouth, it also might put a bit of extra spice for Exeter. But most importantly, Exeter can't get a bigger draw in the 5th round, because in the 4th round, they're already playing the highest ranked team left in the tournament. So on that note, Marley, thank you for joining us for the last few minutes of the episode, and James and producer Alfie, thanks for being with us for the whole time. And we'll be back with plenty more episodes this week as we review Exeter and look ahead to Fulham.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
I think we're going to